Hey guys, thanks everyone for joining today. We're here with the Workbench, a resource-rich newsletter and podcast for home service owner operators and folks that support these businesses. I have a good friend, an old client, and now a collaborator on in Jordan Gao. He is a founder, owner, CEO of Rosie. Rosie is an AI-powered answering service. And yeah, really excited to have you on, Jordan. It's good to see you. It's been a minute since we caught up live. So excited to dive into your story, your background, how you landed on building an AI powered answering service for SMBs.
Yep.
So yeah, how are you doing today, Jordan?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. It is fun to go from Twitter DMs out into public and get on the show together. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm looking forward to just kind of talking through how I made my way here. I started off in like family business world.
Okay.
And then I went into e-commerce, and then I got into software, and I'm kind of very comfortable coming back and bringing all those together, now building software for like family businesses, smaller businesses, home services, just like local companies. It feels liberating to get out of the e-commerce world and out into like what feels like the real business world.
Yeah, I spent about 18 months in e-commerce, where I met my now co-founder for my company. So it was a very good experience from that sense. But I found e-commerce to be a very interesting industry. I came across a lot of very interesting characters running different types of brands. And yeah, I'll say I wasn't thrilled with it. It was all good, but I'm glad I'm not building in e-commerce anymore. But my opinions aside, Jordan, would love for you just to give a quick background on you, your story as an entrepreneur, and then what you're working on today, and then we'll just take it from there.
Cool. If we kind of take a few steps back, which I think is important because it helps kind of define my version of entrepreneurship, is I'm an immigrant and grew up in an immigrant entrepreneur household, and that imprints your DNA from a very early age. Watching your parents kind of come from another country, from Israel in my case, and decide to not work for anyone, and that led directly toward my inability to work for other people. I tried. I went to like Wall Street as an investment banker for 1 year and ran away screaming. Literally, I was the guy that like quit as soon as the bonus hit my bank account 1 year into a 2-year analyst program. Everyone was like, well, I guess this isn't for you. So ever since then, I've been doing different forms of entrepreneurship. Like I said, I worked with my family for a bit in a property tax reduction company, which ironically was extremely phone-based. You do a lot of direct marketing, direct mail, and then people call. And then how you field those phone calls makes a huge difference in your business. And then I got into e-commerce. I started as a brand and selling, drop shipping actually. And then I went over to the software version. Then I got deeper into software with a company called Carthook that I built, which was a checkout company on Shopify, which is like oxymoronic because Shopify is a checkout company. And they let that be known to us after we got too big and started processing like $1 billion a year. So that's my version of the bad experience. It was a great experience overall, but it's no fun to kind of run into one of the big internet platforms.
I had a very similar experience with our first app being tied to Jobber, one of the most popular home services CRMs, and live by the sword, die by the sword. There's so many benefits of being part of an ecosystem like that, and then there's so many risks. So at Carthook, Jordan, before we ever met, I feel like I'm not super familiar with the e-commerce space, but I felt like I had heard of Carthook. Like it was a pretty big company, right?
We were rocking.
Okay.
Yeah.
We talk a little bit about that. Yeah. What was that like?
Yeah. So what we did at Carthook, it started off as an abandoned cart app, hence the name. But then we realized there was a much bigger problem instead of helping recapture abandoned carts, if you just have a better checkout, you have fewer abandoned carts. That's it was as simple as that in terms of the initial idea for the product. We just were doing what customers wanted. A lot of marketers were selling digital products, courses and ebooks and like that side of the internet. And they started migrating over to Shopify because it became almost as easy to sell a physical product as it was to sell the digital product, right? The infrastructure around e-commerce blossomed, and you could be a marketer and be good at Facebook ads, and you would sell physical products, but you didn't hold inventory. Some people never even saw the products that they sold. And that brought in a lot of very innovative marketing ideas from the digital marketing world. And we built a checkout for those people. It had post-purchase upsells and order bumps and optimization, A/B testing, and all this stuff, which was amazing. And we grew extremely quickly. We grew like from 1 million ARR to 2 to 4 to 6 in 3 years. 25-person company, bootstrapped. It was like a dream. It was phenomenal. We had an office in Portland, office in Slovenia. It was like a lot of hard work and built a great, profitable company. The problem is, like you mentioned, the live by the sword, die by the sword. Shopify was uninterested in us peeling $1 billion a year out of their checkout flow. And overall, it's their platform. They can do whatever they want. They didn't do it very well. So it ended up
They weren't nice about it.
They were not nice at all. There was no Canadian niceties involved. Yeah. So it kind of crushed the company. I ended up selling it, made a few bucks, and was like, all right, next thing I do, I'm not getting involved in the same platform dynamic. So I went out and raised money for a company called Rally, which was a checkout, but for the headless ecosystem outside of platforms. Kind of worked, kind of didn't work, didn't grow fast enough. And then when I wanted to do something else and pivot, AI was popping, voice was interesting. And that's initially how I got the idea for Rosie. So happy to kind of dive more into that.
Yeah. I want to dive into Rosie. I just want to wrap up the previous experience because I think a lot of people listening and reading this are entrepreneurs, and to bootstrap a software company to, you said $6 or $10 million in revenue. That's
$6 million ARR.
That's no small feat. So, and what year did you start Cart Hook?
Oh man, I think I don't know. 2018?
Okay.
2017? Something like that. Maybe 16.
So yeah, I think for a lot of people listening, that just sounds like a Herculean task to bootstrap a software company. It's a little bit easier nowadays with Cursor and some of these tools, but
you have more leverage.
More leverage. But yeah, I mean, I want to get into Rosie because I think that's most relevant to the audience. But would you mind just giving us a TLDR on how you got Cart Hook started and what the process was for getting your first 5-10 customers and just the early days of that business?
Yeah, most important thing was listening to what the market wanted. And the way I found it through Facebook groups. So e-commerce and all those digital marketers that I was referring to, they lived in Facebook groups at that time, and that's where they discussed everything. So what was happening was there was this merging of two worlds, the ClickFunnels world and the Shopify world. The ClickFunnels were the marketers. They thought in funnels. They thought in conversion rates and what comes after what and how do I maximize AOV. And then Shopify was and is now the best system, CRM, platform, whatever you want to call it, for e-commerce. And there was an enormous struggle to accomplish the marketing strategies that the ClickFunnels crew wanted to accomplish on the Shopify platform. And I saw all that frustration, and they were just yelling out for the product that they wanted. How do I sell like ClickFunnels, but process the orders and the inventory in Shopify? How do I do this? Has anyone figured out how to do this? And basically that ad nauseum for weeks and weeks and weeks. And in my e-commerce experience, when I was running like a drop shipping store myself with my brothers, I was the one responsible for conversion rate optimization. And I got really into checkout optimization. So all of these different worlds kind of combined. And all of a sudden I kind of looked in the mirror and was like, I guess I'm the guy to build a checkout for these people because I just had the same problem. I was on a more flexible platform called Volusion. That'll date me. And I optimized the heck out of our checkout, and it made a huge difference. So I kind of could sympathize with them. And I was sitting on a software company. It was a big risk. We probably had like $100,000 in the bank, $20,000 a month in revenue with this cart abandonment product. And I went to Rock, who's now my CTO and co-founder still at Rosie, 2 companies later. And I said, I think we should go for it. It's either going to kill the company or make the company. And we launched it. We got into a fight with Shopify immediately. They told us, don't you dare, basically. I sent the most important email of my career up until that time. And I basically said, this aggression will not stand or else I'm going to go, basically talk about it. And they said, fine, do what you want. Just stay out of the App Store. they assumed we would just kind of go away and die with that distribution, but there was so much demand. We did $100 million in processing the first year, then like $600 million the second year, and then over $1 billion the third year. So it just kind of, skyrocketed with all the interesting challenges of that type of growth. But if you build something the market wants, it feels different than everything else. And that kind of goes all the way back around to Rally and then Rosie, two very different experiences between what I think the market wants and what the market tells you it wants.
So what is Rosie?
Okay. Rosie allows small businesses to never miss a phone call. What that really means is Rosie is an AI voice agent, right? That's like the technical jargon. But I made sure to start off with the actual benefit of it. You forward your calls to Rosie and she picks up the phone for you when you're not available. Some people do it all the time because they don't want to pick up the phone. We literally have people who are like, how do I avoid talking to people as much as possible? Can you answer the phone for me? Other people are so busy that they have overflow. They're on the phones too much. They don't have enough capacity. And other people just use Rosie for after hours and when they're closed. And the example I love to use that I heard from a customer that I think really resonates is it's Saturday morning, it's 10 a.m., you're with your kids eating breakfast and the phone rings. A lot of people in the home services industry know that phone call might be like a $3,000 contract. It might be a $30,000 contract, it might be a $300,000 contract, or a $300 contract. Whatever it is, it might be really important to you. And you don't know whether or not you should pick up the phone. I'm with my family. I told myself I'm going to be a certain type of parent. I don't want to pick up this phone call, but I also have a duty as a parent and a business owner to pick up this phone call. And that, like, feeling stuck in that scenario is one of my favorite things that we solve. Because what Rosie will do, she'll answer the phone, she'll answer questions, she'll send out a link to make an appointment, she'll provide pricing, and then she'll send you a summary of the phone conversation. And then at 10:02 a.m., you can look at it and say, should I call this person back right now, like a good business owner? Or is this something that's just not necessary and I can call them back on Monday?
What led you to starting Rosie after your experience in e-commerce and staying in that world with two companies and even raising money in that world? What brought you to what feels like, maybe you have some family background in it, which makes sense, but what feels like a relatively new industry for you and a new mechanism and a new type of company to work with? How'd you get here?
So I often find myself going about looking for a business cynically and then justifying it emotionally, almost like, I'm looking at it from like a dollars and like market point of view. And then it goes through like a filter of like, would I actually want to do this for the next few years? Would this be cool to do? Would I enjoy the people I work with? All that. So I went to the YC website and they have a directory of all their companies. And you can just scroll through and see what all their new companies are doing. That's literally how I was basically giving up on the Rally concept. We built a great product. It was basically like a Shopify checkout for everyone outside of Shopify. If you've ever bought something from a store outside of Shopify, you kind of wish the experience was more similar to Shopify, where it remembers you like shopping and so on. Great idea, great execution. Market didn't want it. Whole bunch of reasons. Who cares what the reasons are? At some point, I had to admit to myself, market doesn't want it. So I was very open-minded to building something new, and it made sense to me to build something in AI. The reason for that is because it's rare when you can find a big problem in the economy that doesn't have 100 solutions. Like good old capitalism and our economy is quite efficient. If there's a big problem, it will be addressed in a lot of different ways. And that's not a bad thing. You can jump in and compete. But AI can create a situation where there's a very big problem, but there are no solutions because the solutions weren't possible. And that's just so rare. And I saw that around phone. And I basically just looked at it from like a business point of view. Like I used to run my own business and answer the phone. When you're in that seat, you used to have two options. Either you send it to voicemail or you hire an answering service. Those are the only two options. So all of a sudden, this new third option comes along that AI can pick up the phone for you. And that felt like this insane opportunity where it's just an absolutely monstrous problem. And there's now a solution that didn't exist. That's why when you go to Rosie, yes, about 50% of our customers are home service companies, but I want it to be broad. And so we've got property management. We've got someone just signed up for their martial arts school by coincidence, like 10 minutes away. So I emailed them. Like, it's just everybody's got a phone problem. So, so like you heard right from the beginning, a little cynical. What about this? Go to YC, copy some other people, what's available. Yeah. But then you look at it from like well, can I do this for the next 5 to 10 years of my life? And yes, it's been fun.
What led you to want to raise money for Rally, and have you raised money for Rosie? And talk to us more about the fundraising process and what it's like to be a venture-backed founder, because I'm bootstrapped. I would guess 90% of the people listening to this and reading the newsletter are bootstrapped small business people, less on the fundraising VC side. Mm-hmm. So what was that journey like for you, and what are your learnings from raising money for these companies?
Yeah, I historically never raised money.
Okay.
Family business background, you're like, I don't know, whatever we have in the bank, maybe it's a bank loan, but you got to make it work. That was always my mindset. That was actually a challenging mindset to go beyond, pretty classic E-Myth kind of a problem. Hey, we got to do the work. Not an easy thing to get over at all. Took me a very long time to get there. And CardHook was bootstrapped. And my general sense of things is bootstrapping is better off. I come from like the microconf world, which is like Rob Walling's Startup for the Rest of Us podcast, like that ecosystem of software founders that are a bit ideologically bootstrapped. Now, I'm less ideologically bootstrapped. I just think it's better for a bunch of different reasons. After selling CardHook, I felt like I had an opportunity to try something new. I had basically just established a reputation, right? Like growing a company that quickly. And that gave me opportunity to raise money. And I thought that would be a really interesting challenge for the next, next experience in my career. So I raised money for Rally, and we've raised $18 million, which was, kind of a wild, interesting experience. I can talk about that fundraising and just that mindset. And we had money left in the bank. So Rosie is a pivot from Rally. It's legally same company. So I have not raised money for Rosie. I just raised money once, and we had money. And again, the way I think about it is like, well, you've got money in the bank and you've got people, and like, let's shrink down the team and build this AI product. So that's what we did. And we launched Rosie about 6 months ago. Yeah, about 6 months ago.
What was that emotionally like to go through the process of raising no small amount of money for one idea, and then needing to face the music and say, hey, this is not it, and we need to go do something new? I'd imagine, just speaking for myself, I think that could be challenging, because as an entrepreneur, you build up a lot of conviction, you work really hard on one concept, and then you have to be really honest with yourself that, hey, maybe this is not what we thought it was. How'd you manage that emotionally to go through such a big pivot with that much money?
I think the experience with CardHook, I am paper overing a little bit around the emotional side of that experience. It was horrible. It was, you went through the challenge. You came out with your goal, right? 6 million ARR, doubling every year, bootstrapped. We had a few bucks from friends and family, but nothing that changed the nature of the company. I owned a big portion of it. I'm cruising toward my goal, very profitable, potential for a big exit. Like I saw the finish line, and it got yanked by some jerk billionaire in Canada, not cool. And they could have done a million things. Instead, they vampire squid on our face and sucked in all the IP and all the information, destroyed the business. It was a terrible experience. Along with that came all the things that all entrepreneurs deal with. It's a roller coaster. No, even if it goes smooth, even if it goes well, it's a roller coaster. A friend stealing the app and trying to copy it, like employees doing weird things. For the most part, I had a good experience, but man, it was a roller coaster. So I think by the time I got to Rally and making the pivot, I didn't feel that much. I was kind of like, well, I want to succeed. This isn't succeeding. Let's do something with a higher chance of success. It wasn't that much. There is a dynamic around preferred shareholders and venture capitalists and all that. And those dynamics are complicated. It ranges all the way from, well, they've written us off anyway. They don't care. all the way to, well, you have a lead investor and they're on your board and you got to make sure they're on board. And the way to do that is constant communication, very open dialogue, everything up front, no BS, all of that. So all of those things, I think I use my experience to do the things the right way. And I also use my roller coaster experience to kind of handle the emotional up and down in a way that was like, okay, what do you do? Let's keep going.
What would you say to an entrepreneur who's looking to build as part of a bigger ecosystem? And I think that really comes into play in two ways. One is you have maybe a software entrepreneur, someone who wants to be a Webflow certified partner, someone who wants to build an app for another ecosystem. And maybe the dynamic's the same if you want to open a franchise, although I imagine a franchise is much more invested in your success than Shopify is in its app store.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm thinking about starting an app in another ecosystem or kind of locking into a bigger ecosystem as a young entrepreneur, what would you say to that person?
I think as long as you go into it with clear eyes, it's okay. But don't deceive yourself. The platform wants to succeed for themselves, not for you. If you are aligned with their success, you can have a good time. So, like you mentioned, franchises are that alignment can be really good. Everybody who's been in a franchise, I have been an investor in a franchise. My brother is a Crunch Gym franchisee. Everyone knows that the dynamic between franchisor and franchisee is not this pure, relationship. It can be challenging. Ideally, the alignment remains as close as possible. On the software side, if you're bootstrapped, building inside of an ecosystem really, really, really helps. Like, I still think if you're bootstrapped, building a company inside of the Shopify ecosystem, not a bad idea at all. But there's a bit of a tall poppy syndrome around all of this stuff. It's very few companies that hit escape velocity without getting their head taken off. So if you think about Shopify, you think about Klaviyo. Klaviyo made it out.
Right? Shopify invested in them, right? Like Shopify's getting their pound of flesh off that, no?
Not before they tried to acquire them for a lowball price.
Okay.
And Klaviyo was growing and had enough strength to say no. And then they said, fine, I guess we'll invest in you. And Klaviyo knew that was better off for everybody to do. Same sort of thing, Jobber, House Call Pro, Service Titan. There are a lot of software companies that are built on the backs of those platforms. And if you stay in a good symbiotic relationship, you can do really well. But you gotta go in knowing you should probably diversify if possible. Mm-hmm. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. We've had it already. We've talked to CRMs in the home services space, and they've already told us, oh, no, we're not partnering with you. We're not giving you access to anything. We're building our own, and we wish you luck.
Yeah.
Everything I just said there was true, minus the we wish you luck part.
Yeah, no, I had names will not be named, but I had a very similar experience for Lead Truffle. So, yeah, but I get it. Show me the incentive. I'll show you the outcome. These people, they got investors and they need $100, $200, $500 million outcome for anyone to get paid. So
yes,
I get it. It's rational. Focusing in on Rosie, like, what have you learned in, the phone when we think about the channel rank for SMBs, home services, but I think really any small business that's locally based? To me, the priority stack in channel is phone number one, probably website number two, and then kind of everything else below that, right? If you want to get in contact with a business near you, for me, my first instinct is to pick up the phone. I think that's true for a lot of people. I think a lot of homeowners are typically older, more comfortable on the phone than texting. What have you learned in partnering with these businesses and owning arguably their most valuable real estate with it, which is the phone?
Yes. So it's a lot of pressure for better and worse. It is true. It was an important truth to kind of acknowledge before going into the company, building a product or anything, that the current path for the consumer is to search online and then pick up the phone.
Correct.
So if that's the case, then there's something worth addressing. Now, the same way I built a checkout, we built a cart abandonment app first, and then we built a checkout, and what I call that transition was flying closer to the sun. I have found that it is advantageous to fly close to the sun when building software. And that means either where the money is or where the customers are, something severe. right? Something that it is a real painkiller compared to vitamin in software parlance. So the phone puts you right in the path of the sun. There's a lot of heat on the phone. It matters. And I really like that because I think you have a chance to address something very, very painful or very, very important, and that gives you pricing power. It puts a lot of pressure on making good products so people don't leave, because if it's not good, then they have to get rid of it. So it puts us in the right place. So that was like one of the key learnings. The other thing I learned is that it can be such a painful problem that you actually don't need to be perfect yet. And that was really important for us because I had a lot of fear around, AI is one of the things I like about voice AI is that it's actually not that good. It's not as good as it's going to be in a year. And I like that idea. Let's build now and do whatever we can to establish ourselves. But we know all of this AI is going to get better. So in a year or two, when voice is incredible, we want to already be established. What has surprised me is that learning around you actually don't need to be perfect because it's so painful, because at 10:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, just addressing it to the 90%, not 100%, is actually still a very important pain relief for the company. Mm-hmm. And the thing that you're competing with, this is another important learning for us. When we kind of first got in, one of the first big realizations was we are not competing with the human answer in the phone. We are competing with voicemail. And everybody hangs up on voicemail. So in the interim period, where we are right now, before AI and voice becomes incredibly good that you can barely even tell, you actually just need to beat voicemail, not the human. As soon as you have a higher conversion rate of a successful call that isn't a hang up on voicemail, you have added value. So that was really important to us because it motivated us to basically stop being embarrassed about it not being absolutely incredible and amazing at all times, and just acknowledging the fact that these people got 10 calls a day that were hangups, and now out of those 10 calls, 8 of them turned into information that they can use as a lead. We've added value, and it buys us time to just keep improving and improving and improving to get to the point where it's just incredible and does all these different things, to the 100% instead of to the 80 or 90.
Yeah, I think that's really good insight, is that you're actually competing against voicemail and not the human on the phone, because that's something we talk a lot about and I hear a lot is we're not, if you owned a small business, I still think probably one of the highest leverage things you can do when someone calls is have a real human pick up the phone and say, hey, how can I help you?
Yep.
Even especially in today's world with so much AI and so much automation, I think that's a real differentiator. So I would never necessarily try and replace that for my company, and I don't know if Rosie would necessarily want to try and replace that either. But the idea that, hey, every other instance where you're not able to pick up, it's off hours, we're gonna kill voicemail in terms of conversion rate makes a ton of sense.
Yes.
And you brought up an interesting point, Jordan. I think that I've seen is one of the biggest hesitations around AI and automation is do people want to talk to a robot? I think that's probably a question you get a lot.
Sure.
And what's your, obviously you have a lot of customers doing really well with Rosie. So what has been kind of if I'm I own an HVAC company out here in Austin, mm-hmm. and I'm kind of yeah, Rosie sounds cool, but my audience is 50 plus homeowners, and I don't think they want to talk to a robot. How have you gotten around that? And what are you seeing from your customers in that sense?
Yeah. My first comment there is, be surprised how many people over 50 don't realize they're talking to a robot.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting finding in general. Yep. You mentioned it. You should pick up the phone if you can. That's the highest conversion rate. That's the best, and so on. But if you can't, right, it's kind of a irony for me to kind of say that, but it's fine. But you just can't always pick up the phone. And you're far better off with Rosie picking up the phone than your voicemail. So that's, and you're not always around. And there are the weird limitations that we learned about, local service ads. You really don't want to run those unless you can pick up the phone. Because if it goes to voicemail, don't pick up the phone, Google won't show your ads. So having Rosie allows you to advertise throughout the evening when your big competitors are advertising through the evening and you aren't, because of this limitation. So a lot of these little pieces of value that you kind of don't expect. The other shocking thing that we found is people really don't like their answering services. The human power.
Yeah, go ahead.
People are shockingly unhappy with their answering services.
I was gonna say,
So
like, I could see a Facebook ad from Rosie, like, "This is why the big answering services hate us." Do you have a lot of pushback from those folks? I know that's a huge industry, right? Like onshore, offshore, 24/7 answering services. Like, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to hear how
yeah,
you're kind of dealing with that industry.
we thought we would be kind of, stuck between voicemail and them, and not really. I'll tell you a funny story. One of the big answering services wants to use us as their fallback. Right?
There you go.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Another example, we have a water remediation company, commercial. These guys get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night from a hospital. That's a $500,000 deal on the phone, right? Something went wrong. The whole floor got flooded. We need help. That's a big, big job. So they were using an answering service. This answering service for $2 a minute would put these people on hold for 10, 12, 14 minutes. And this company's losing their minds. Like, what are we doing here? How is this possible? So now we're building, an emergency transfer for them. So you can call Rosie. This starts to kind of answer your question. Rosie, if you look at the lowest tier in our plans, that's an answering service. The higher tiers start to move toward a receptionist. And there's a lot of sophistication that we can build in over time. For example, someone calls this water remediation company. Rosie picks up. Is this an emergency? Customer caller says, yes, it is an emergency. Rosie says, great, let me get someone on the line. And Rosie will call a number. And if they don't pick up, call the next number. If they don't pick up, call the next number. And when that person picks up, she'll say, I have a transfer emergency from this person. Do you want to accept? They say yes. Rosie will send a summary of the conversation so far by text to the person who just answered the phone, and now you're connected. So it can be this hybrid, this in-between layer of value between voicemail, answering service, receptionist, the person being able to answer. It's flexible, it's software. So it doesn't have to just, well, this is a person and needs to replace a person. If it can't replace a person entirely, therefore it's not valuable. That was also an interesting learning in general, that there are gradations around where value can be added.
Right. Yeah. It's not as pure as this is here to replace humans. And I think that's a bigger trend with AI, is that I think the Luddite perspective would be, oh, AI is here to replace me. And I don't think that's the case. Let's just take from a sales perspective. Is AI going to replace salespeople? In my opinion, no. But will the salespeople who use AI replace those who don't? I think so. So I think AI is a really powerful way to make you more efficient and augment you, not necessarily replace you. And I think that's a perfect example with Rosie. So Rosie sounds like it's doing really well. You guys have a very kind of specific value prop, kind of helping own the phones for these SMBs. What's the future look like, Jordan? Is it industry expansion? Is it building your own CRM? Where do you want to take Rosie over the next 5 years, given the great traction you've had so far?
Really hard to answer. So here's why. We raise money. Generally speaking, that pushes you toward, well, don't build a feature, build a platform, because a platform can have a big outcome. Therefore, find a wedge and then decide a direction to, expand or dominate, or what can you eat up and so on. I am not sure. Maybe I'm not sure because I don't have clarity yet on which direction to go in. I always have this problem where I think other entrepreneurs have the same thing. You look at what you're doing right now and you say, what else should I add? In software, it's called feature bloat. Right? In SMB land, it's like, should I go beyond my core offering? Okay. I challenge myself on that with irrefutable proof. Right now, Rosie is growing really fast. You don't actually have to do anything else. What makes you think you need to do anything else? You're growing right now with the exact feature set that you have right now, with the pricing, with the marketing site, with everything you have right now, it's growing. Anything that you think you need to add, that's on you. You're making it up. You're deciding and planning and scheming and whatever. So I always use that to basically calm myself down. Relax. Just do a really good job at what you're doing right now, and you can keep growing. So Rosie's so new, and we're still learning so much about what surrounds it, that I hesitate to kind of decide we're going to go in this direction. I get little inklings. we get little comments like, can I just use the Rosie phone number as my main phone number? And you hear that once and you're like, please don't. Please, that sounds like a nightmare. If you need to cancel, we need to transfer your phone number, you need to change things. Like, please don't do that. But then you just keep hearing it again and again and again. You start to see some breadcrumbs. Okay, maybe people see us as like a phone system in a way because they log in and they basically have an inbox of their voicemails. Like, oh, maybe that's how they think of it. And so we're still picking up breadcrumbs. I don't know where it's going to go. I want to hesitate to go in a particular direction too quickly. And let's let this thing kind of naturally marinate a little bit and let the market tell us where we should go.
Love it. Well, Jordan, congrats on the success so far. Really interesting story. And anything else we didn't cover, Jordan, that you kind of want to share from your story, or anything related to Rosie that we didn't cover here that you think might be worth hitting on?
Let's see. I guess the thing for me is it's been so fun to work with SMBs. I feel like I'm with my people again.
Yeah.
And people who run family businesses, right? I've run multiple businesses with my brothers, with my dad. In e-commerce, I felt a little out of place. It's kind of a young guy's game, e-commerce, a little bit of a hustler's game these days. And I didn't identify with that quite so much. So yeah, I love the resurgence around SMB. Yeah. I like that the status of SMB and home services is rising. I like private equities paying attention, big money's paying attention. Leaving Harvard to start a painting company is seen as a cool, smart thing to do. So I just think this part of the economy is doing well. In an AI world, it feels very interesting to kind of be right in between these things. Right? There's an acknowledgement these days of, what's not going away? These home services. They're not going away. So it just feels like an exciting time in both of these places to have, a foot in each side, in the SMB and the home services world, the AI and tech world and software. So it feels cool. It feels like a great, healthy community. Everyone's kind of pumped up. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a big pie. So that part of it's great.
And I have to echo that sentiment. We're both from Long Island, right? So I think that me being in tech and in the coast in Manhattan and Los Angeles and being around Ivy Leaguers, and nothing against those folks, but sometimes I've felt a little out of place as well. And now that I've started working with more SMB owners, I just feel like my rapport with generally those business owners is just so much more natural for me compared to maybe some of the people I was interacting with day to day, living in New York City and these big cities and working at these fancy companies. So just got to echo that sentiment. They've been great to work with. So yeah, Jordan, we really appreciate you coming on, man. For people that are listening and want to try out Rosie, people who want to just follow your story, maybe connect with you on social, where can folks find you?
So I'm on X, Twitter, at Jordan Gall. The company is heyrosie.com. I just want to say thank you for having me on, and thank you for everyone listening. If anyone wants to give Rosie a try, you can use a coupon for 50% off the first month. Just say Workbench 50 when you're signing up, and they'll give you 50% off. If you have any questions, just hit me up. Go to the site, go to Twitter. It's fun to connect with people. Bryan, thank you very much.
Yeah, love it. Thank you, Jordan. Have a good one.